Hey, Eric here. I just wanted to let you know a couple of things before we get started. The podcast you're about to hear was released internally at my company in July of 2021. It got a tremendous response, and we started thinking about whether we might be able to share it more broadly outside the company. In the process of doing all the reviews to make that happen, we agreed to remove the last names of just about everyone we talked to or about. And so you're going to hear a lot of beeps throughout the entire podcast. It turns out that that was the best solution, so please bear with us even when you hear us referring to Ms. Beep or Admiral Beep. On a related note, I want to make sure you know that we actually have two guys named Jim who speak during the podcast. The first Jim that gets mentioned, the one who took over Bill's job, shares some thoughts about mentoring towards the very end of the podcast. You'll hear the other Jim, the one who helped me negotiate my way into my current job, about 10 minutes in. At one point, you'll hear me make a joke about how Jim was trying to stay ahead of me on the career ladder, but since I used our last names, it's going to be the managers trying to keep Beep ahead of Beep. Ain't technology grand? Anyway, I'm really excited to be able to share this podcast with you. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric, and I'm just going to take a few minutes today to talk with you about my experiences with career development mentoring, which has been really important to me, and I believe it's important for everyone. In order to get us started, I need to come in towards the end of a story that involves my friend and colleague, Bill. Bill looks at me from across the table in his office.
Eric, that sounds like a really complicated problem.
It's somewhere around 2015. I've been working process improvements in core manufacturing for 5 years. Bill has been the department consultant since more or less the invention of the wheel. He's one of my career development mentors, and every 3 months or so, I visit him in his office and we talk. He has provided rock-solid advice every single time. But today, he looks me in the eye and shakes his head.
I don't even know how I would try to solve that.
I sit back in my chair. This has never happened before. Ha! I think to myself, I just stumped Bill. My very next thought, like 10 seconds later, oh no, wait a minute. I just stumped Bill's. What do I do now? Today, we're going to talk about career development mentoring. Your experience with mentoring may not look just like mine, and that's okay. But I want you to see a little bit of what mentoring can look like. For me personally, I need to have variety in my mentors. They bring different things to the table, and that's good. That's what I need. Bill and then Jim, after Bill retired, gave me insight on how to navigate through the technical and political waters in core manufacturing, or CM, the department where I've worked for the last 10 years. Diana gives me perspective as a woman who's held many different jobs, management and other, off the traditional technical path. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the support she's given me through countless ups and downs. I also have another mentor who, for purposes of this podcast, has asked to remain nameless, but this individual works here at NNL, and I really appreciate this person because they tell it to me straight, without sugarcoating, and have no problems pushing me, and if you're listening, you know who you are. John helps me see how my behaviors and decisions look in the eyes of senior management.
Plan your career only loosely. Find work that you like with coworkers you can learn from. That way you'll do your best work, and when you're doing your best work, the opportunities will come to you.
My wonderful friend, Natalie, who's an artist and an entrepreneur and part of my church small group, has given me tons of advice and reading recommendations. A couple of years ago, she had me read this book called Ask For It: How Women Can Use the Power of Negotiation to Get What They Really Want. That book has radically changed how I approach my job, so much so that I've taken Natalie and her husband out to dinner to thank her. Natalie, who's had to do a lot of negotiating in her career, also enjoys saying things like,
"You should take that proposal, eliminate the middleman, and go straight to the top with it."
But the stories I'm going to tell today mostly revolve around the guy who's been my mentor the longest, Jim. Back in 2004, I heard about an opportunity to become a Six Sigma black belt, process improvements. The job was billed as come, learn statistics, learn simulation modeling, learn how to lead teams, talk to senior managers, help take the company to the next level. And I thought, cool. At the time, Bettis was part of Bechtel, and Bechtel had this kind of management infection model with how they did Six Sigma. They would take a manager out of position, train him to be a black belt, have them serve the company running improvement projects for 2 or 3 years, and then they would reintegrate them, return them to a line department, promote them to the next higher level of management, and have them use their new mindset and skills and the little empire they now control. The thing is, I wasn't a manager, and I didn't really want to become one. So I had to talk my way into it, which took a while. I said, I don't think you need to be in management to lead teams or to run statistics or to make simulation models. I'm good at math. I'm good at computers. I'm good with people. I can do this. I got the job. It took me 8 months to certify as a black belt. I spent the next 3 years supporting projects across the program, doing productivity improvements, lean events. It was a great time, but eventually it was time for me to move on. And that's when I ran into a problem I'd created for myself. The Bechtel model had that promotion when you reintegrate, and I still didn't want to be a manager. And so I had no real way to make a promotion happen, but I still wanted one. I talked to lots of departments trying to figure out where I'd go next. Core Manufacturing seemed to be really serious about improving their processes. They had a number of active yellow belts, and they'd previously had a black belt of their own, a guy named Ron, who, before he retired, had reported directly to the department manager, Craig. When I spoke with Craig, he told me that if I came to CM, I probably wouldn't be reporting directly to him, but he thought it was likely that I would end up working for one of his subdivision managers. And that wouldn't technically be a promotion, but it sort of felt like one. I eventually decided that, yes, I was going to move to CM, and once I let them know that, I was sent to talk with RJ, one of the subdiv managers, and I asked him if he was going to be my boss. He said he wasn't really sure that I might end up reporting directly to him or that he might have me be part of his QA group, reporting to a first-line manager. And this created an emotional crisis for me, a lot of disappointment. I didn't want to be anywhere else besides CM, but I'd gotten my heart set on reporting higher up as, kind of like a pseudo promotion. And while on paper the job would be the same either way, I suspected that there was something about reporting to a subdiv manager that carried more prestige and autonomy, a greater opportunity to be working on big picture items. But then on the other hand, maybe I was blowing everything out of proportion. Maybe it was just my ego getting in the way of taking what really could be a great job. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And that was when I called up Jim. I'd known Jim for years. He had a good head on his shoulders. He'd been a manager, so he understood the management mindset. We moved in different circles, so he wasn't part of any of the relationships or politics where I was working, so he could just tell it to me straight. And it's at this point in the story that I need to pause and welcome to our studio my friend and mentor, Mr. Jim.
Hey, Eric. That's great.
We may replace that with an actual trumpet fanfare. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, Eric. Good to see you. Thanks for letting me pop in for a little bit.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. For those I haven't met yet, I am Jim. I've been at NNL for a little over 40 years. The way we're organized now, I've worked in 10 departments over 5 directorates. As I once told Admiral, I can't seem to hold a job for love nor money. I'm currently a consultant engineer in ECF recapitalization and having a blast working on our Idaho projects.
Yeah, so Jim, your actual meeting with Admiral is actually related to mentoring. Can you tell that story just real quick?
Yeah, it was the first time I had met Admiral, and it was during one of his kind of annual check-ins at the laboratory, and it was actually really nice. It was a panel discussion at lunchtime. So he got to eat, and we got to tell him about various mentoring initiatives that were going on. Everything from knowledge management, apprentice program, day-to-day mentoring, career development, planning, and for anyone who knows Admiral, he's very focused on personnel development, and mentoring is very near and dear to his heart. So he was actually so moved by this whole thing. So we got up to leave and everything. It was over in the conference room. We got up to leave, and some of the NRLFO folks came up and said, "Here, you have to come out to the hallway." And I guess you would call it a ceremony. I mean, it was in the main corridor of the N building. So. There you go. But the Admiral came out. There were photographs, and he gave us challenge coins, and it was just really a nice. It was just really a nice thing that just was very unexpected and just happened out of the blue.
Cool. And so, did he have a reaction when you told him that you couldn't hold a job for love or money?
He laughed, and I was very glad he laughed, because that could have gone either way, right? Could have gone either way.
Why am I paying you then?
Exactly.
So I'm going to dive back into my story, right? So I'm thinking about going to see him. I'm not really sure. I call you up. So when we sat down, you heard me out and offered me some thoughts. You said that I was right about my new role probably being a better fit with reporting higher up. And you encouraged me to go and have another talk with Craig, which I did. I called up Craig, told him I needed to meet with him. We sat down, and I said to him, I'll work wherever you put me. Your decision isn't going to change what I choose. I'm still coming to CM. But I said, I think I'm ready to help the whole organization get better, and I think I can do big picture things, and I can do that job better if I'm reporting to a subdiv manager. And Craig, he listened, he nodded, he thanked me for coming in, told me he'd think about it, let me know, meeting adjourned, right? And a few days later, I got word that I was going to be reporting directly to RJ. So that was 2009. Here I am, still in CM, 10 years, 2 promotions later. I've been given, so much freedom and autonomy. RJ is a great boss, been my boss the longest of anybody in the program in my career. And I tell people I don't even have a leash. I just run around the world and do the things that need to be done. I had enough bandwidth to focus on what ended up being a 4-year-long apprentice project to produce the Fukushima documentary. I've gotten just recently an enclosed office, which was exciting, and I asked for it, just like the book that Natalie sent me to had told me to ask for it. I've gotten to overhaul how our department approaches knowledge management and the Knowledge Management Action Plans, or KMAPs. I've helped to establish our Unit Manager Council. I've had a voice in shaping how our decisions get made and where they get made, how we change our local processes, our local instructions. I've worked really, really hard these last few years to get to where I am today, but back then, in a critical moment when I needed support and validation and advice, you were there for me, and you encouraged me to stand up for myself, which was the advice that I needed at that time, and that was just one of the many great interactions that we've had.
Wow, talk about a trip down memory lane. Eric, it's really cool to just take pause and look back on how our relationship has evolved over the years. I think back to that first discussion about the black belt position. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely had a little bit of the vibe of someone seeking out some magical sage wisdom. I warned you early on that I wasn't sure if I had much to offer you, but I do remember thinking, bet I could learn a few things from this guy. Occasionally our relationship still surprises someone. I'll occasionally get comments like, but you don't work together. But he's not a structural engineer. But you're not a black belt. And, I used to, go in this great explanation that fundamentals are universal. And nowadays I just smile and say, That's why we have so much to talk about and learn. Yeah. And it's funny, right? Because, it's that judging a book by its cover thing. Initially, at first glance, it might seem like we didn't have a lot in common, but it didn't take us very long to figure out that just simply wasn't true. Yeah, right? Very, very quickly it became obvious that both you and I are intense lifelong learners. And the other thing that really struck me, like right out of the box, was that you always included this really strong communication element when attacking an issue. And you know what I always say, the 3 keys to success in almost anything: communication, communication, and communication.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It's been, can you imagine a mentoring meeting where you and I sit down and we don't have anything to talk about? We just stare at each other.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I got nothing. You got anything? No, I got nothing. But yeah, I also remember one of our sessions where we were talking about the fact how, we both tend to get thrown into these unusual situations that aren't really well defined corporately, right? You dive into this messy thing that involves people and technology and decisions and uncertainty, and you just kind of wade in and you're just doing all these things that nobody else knows how to tell you to do. It's like, I'm so unusual in that respect. And you're like, yeah, so am I. We're freaks. I'm like, yeah, we're freaks in a good way. Yeah, we're freaks.
Yeah, absolutely we are.
But yeah, even I think that dynamic has worked really well for us, being able to sit down and talk. And so we've kept doing it over the years. Every few weeks or months, we get together, we sit down, we chat about work, talk a little bit about our outside lives, our families, and over time, we've really grown beyond just a strict career mentor-mentee. We've become friends.
Exactly. And, I think back over all the mentoring relationships that I've had over my career, on both sides of that, mentor and mentee. And the most successful ones have always had information and ideas flowing both ways. And our relationship is really a prime example of that. The chemistry is good, right?
Yep.
You take 2 enthusiastic lifelong learners who like to talk. And then you create this safe environment where you can exchange ideas openly, freely, without any kind of fear. And that's where the real magic happens. Okay, originally you were coming in for some sage wisdom. Yep. And clearly I was the mentor and you were the mentee.
And I got the wisdom.
Right?
I did get it.
But time went on and I started picking up more and more things from you. Remember for a while we started really doing deep dives into time management, personal efficiency sorts of things. And I still use a lot of the planning techniques that you pointed out to me during those discussions.
Right. Every email and conversation becomes a task in my Outlook. It's a thing of beauty.
Yeah. So, so the two-way thing is really, that's a sign of a good relationship in my mind. And I continued to learn things as our careers progressed into bigger, more complicated things. I distinctly remember you coming to one of our sessions, and you were so excited, so pumped with this idea of doing a documentary about NNL's involvement with Fukushima.
Hollywood, baby.
Hollywood, right? and it was this grandiose scheme of this documentary like had never been produced before. Yeah, okay. And I'm embarrassed to say that my first response was something like, neat idea, but we don't do that kind of thing here.
Yeah, and to be perfectly fair, that was absolutely true. It's not something we do here.
It's absolutely, but and so there was like this little momentary disconnect. But that's what's great about an open two-way relationship, right? We don't have to agree on everything all the time. After all, we're not trying to make clones of each other. That would be probably easier. We really, right? We're really trying to help each other grow.
Right.
And despite my first reaction, I'm so glad you pushed forward. The documentary is truly fabulous.
Thank you.
And I highly recommend it. Anyone who hasn't seen it yet, take a couple hours, get some popcorn, and watch it.
Available on a V-Brick near you.
And I'm most thankful that my initial wet rag response didn't stop you from including the topic in discussions down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about the range of topics that we covered. Time-lapse photography and travel rules to script writing and motivation of a volunteer organization.
Yep.
We covered a lot of ground.
Oh, yeah. For those you project management buffs out there, making a movie is a big project.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I learned so much with you going through that.
Yeah.
And it was such an eye-opener for me. Until then, I really didn't fully appreciate the power of things like videos and podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So, I look at us today and like those really hard mentor-mentee lines, man, they've really blurred, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, we're much more like collaborating colleagues today. And you can see that. I mean, think of some of our more recent conversations. We've both been organizing advisor teams in our respective departments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've been sharing successes and challenges, and it's been really beneficial and validating, just really helped us both along those paths.
Absolutely.
And in those conversations, there's no mentor, there's no mentee, just two professionals talking in a huddle, learning from each other.
There you go.
And by the way, Eric, I'm very happy that you're now a member of the NNL advisor community.
Well, thank you.
Congrats.
Jim. And I'm very happy that you are now a member of the NNL consultant community.
Thanks a bunch.
The managers of the lab are like, oh, we got to keep a couple levels ahead of so let's get this done.
Whatever it takes. So in these new positions, as you might expect, we tend to dive into bigger picture topics, right? Mm-hmm. So through our Horizon Planning initiatives, NNL is evolving and reinventing itself for the future. I mean, so big, exciting things are happening all around us.
Yep.
And looking at these things through two sets of eyes and talking about what each of us sees can really help us grasp the bigger picture. Similarly, I really appreciate our open dialogue about things like COVID, ongoing societal racial issues.
Lots to talk about.
And often these are not easy topics, right?
Yeah.
So having that safe, trusting environment where these things can be kicked around openly and explored definitely helps both of us grow, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. This actually would be the moment for me to put in a shameless plug for our company's employee resource groups, or ERGs. They were really designed to be a safe place where people could get together and talk and learn from each other. They're part of our corporate diversity and inclusion strategy. We have groups that are focused on African Americans, on Hispanics, on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. We've got several chapters of Women in Nuclear, one here in Pittsburgh, one up in Albany, one out in Idaho. We've got a Working Moms ERG. We've got a group focused on the LGBTQ community. We've got a couple groups for military vets, right? So all kinds of groups. From the NNL homepage on the Classified Network, you can do a search on the term Employee Resource Groups, and it will take you to a page with all the details, all the points of contact, and I would encourage any of you listening, if you're curious, you want to learn more, go and check them out.
So, my friend.
Yes, sir.
I think our evolving relationship is pretty cool.
Yep, I agree.
I learned a lot from that person who came to see me for some career advice a long time ago. I mean, hey, who would have thought that the old guy who wasn't keen on a Fukushima documentary would be making a podcast? Truly unprecedented times, my friend.
I agree. Jim, it has been fantastic having you as a mentor and a friend and on this podcast. I love you. You are great.
Right
really
back
great.
at you.
And
right back at you.
Thanks so much for stopping by. It was really great having you here today.
Thanks for having me.
All
Cheers.
Right. Very good. In addition to having a bunch of mentors of my own, I also have the privilege of being a career development mentor for Molly, who works in the reactor servicing department and who also recently certified as a lean process improvement green belt. Molly agreed to share with us a few words about her own experience with having a mentor.
When I first started working at NNL in 2016, I heard a lot about career development plans and how important they were to achieve your career goals. So I tried to write one. I didn't get very far, though, because I wasn't really sure what my career goals were. I decided to put the career development plan off until later. Then a few years later, my manager told me I should find a mentor. So I went to the mentoring database and started looking. Eric had some similar interests and was at the same site as me, so I decided to reach out to him. Talking to Eric and hearing about his own career path has really helped me sort out what I want in my own career. And even more, he's helped me understand how to pursue those things, especially by encouraging me to share my goals with my manager and others, and ask for help in achieving those goals. One really helpful thing Eric did was have me write out what things I enjoy doing at work and what things I don't enjoy. Once I saw those laid out, it became much easier to see some of the common themes. I was really glad to have this list when a few months later my subdivision announced a reorg, and that we should all talk to our managers about where we would like to end up. My career goals are still a bit vague. Really, there are a lot of different paths I could be happy on. But I've got more direction now and an understanding of how to move towards my goals.
And so now it's my pleasure to welcome to the program my very good friend and fellow Myers-Briggs ENFJ, Kate.
Thank you very much.
Kate is in the house. Hello, Kate. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you, too.
So Kate is part of NNL's mentoring committee, a group of partisans and advocates and management type folks who support the mentoring and career development structure across the laboratory. And she's come here today to help unpack a little bit of that for all of you. And so, Kate, what have you got? I'd really love to hear your perspective on all things mentoring.
I'm very happy to participate in a podcast that is centered around mentoring, and obviously it seems like a great place for a shameless mentoring plug.
Absolutely.
So thank you for
shameless
inviting
plugs
me.
are what we do here.
We're extroverts, and so maybe are seeking external communication more than a lot of people at this laboratory, but rich mentoring experiences are not just for us. Everyone can have them.
Right.
We have a mentor database where a bunch of mentors across the laboratory have volunteered to say, I want to spend time mentoring, and have filled out a mentor profile. You can search that database based on a person's name or some of the attributes in there to find a mentor that may be your match.
Okay.
You can also reach out to anybody on the mentoring committee who can help you. I found the best mentors from other mentors, meaning I have a mentor, I ask who else I should talk to, and that mentor recommends another person to talk to.
Sure.
I think that the laboratory has a rich mentoring network that people just need to tap into.
So I also think that the laboratory has a rich population of hardcore introverts, right? And you and I are not those people, but you know, I think the activation energy around picking up the phone and calling somebody that you don't know and saying, would you be willing to be my mentor? That feels really awkward for a lot of folks. Do you have any thoughts or perspective on what would help a really, really introverted or just downright shy person to take the steps that they would need to take?
I guess I would say that I think mentors can be flexible, and they can be tailor their communication styles. So if a hardcore introvert is still in need of mentorship, it's okay to reach out through maybe a more comfortable mechanism like email. Hi, I got your name from so-and-so, or I found you in the mentor database. Would it be okay if I scheduled some time?
Right.
I think maybe that's a little bit more comfortable than a cold call.
Sure.
I'd like to think that you can maybe focus on the prize, which is I'm going to end up with, hopefully, a person who can help me in a comfortable situation based on mutual trust.
Right.
I would say it's just as compelling of a situation for an introvert as it is for an extrovert. It just, to your point, maybe a little bit more awkward to cold call.
The folks on the mentor list have kind of already said, I'm wanting and willing to mentor, and so I don't think it's going to be a hard sell for
That's
that
true.
set of folks,
Yes.
right? They're probably going to say, sure, I'd love to get together with you. This is what I do. And so...
Mentoring is one of my favorite things that I do.
Really?
I always make time for mentoring.
and what
Just
is it that
find
you
an
love
open one.
about doing mentoring?
Well, number one, I would say, for the record, all of you introverts out there, Eric mentioned that we're in a laboratory full of introverts. So there's a good chance that your mentor might be an introvert and may have struggled with the same things that you're struggling
Statistically
with.
speaking, it is bound to happen.
So you may even ask that mentor for advice. But I love mentoring because, as you discussed, I'm an extrovert. Whether extrovert or introvert, I'm very much a people person.
Sure.
And I really, really like helping other people, whether it's navigating their career, navigating some assignment, navigating this place. I really, really like connecting with other people and being able to help them by sharing the lessons that I've learned. And I have a very good mentor, maybe in Heather, who taught me something very valuable, which was when we were having a discussion about how you balance, my kids were very young at the time, how do you balance working full-time at this place and being a full-time mom? And how do you not have guilt about both of those things?
Yes.
And she kind of made me feel like my contributions, whatever I could give at the laboratory, were worth it, and that I shouldn't have guilt about trying to do both, number one. But number two, it made me really value just a little bit of a vote of confidence from somebody who's been through it. And it certainly made me want to lift up other women.
Sure.
I was just thinking about, so you, I think you started your podcast telling a story about a guy that maybe we both know,
Yes.
who is now retired, lucky guy. And he was also a powerful mentor for me, who gave me a vote of confidence when I didn't have it and maybe when I needed it most.
Right. Eric here. I'm going to break into this interview with Kate to just say that Bill was a lifeline for all of us. I want to play for you just a tiny bit of tape from the very end of my interview with Bill so that you can get a sense of the role that he played in our department.
My door's usually open. There's usually an empty chair there for someone like you. So take advantage of it when you want to.
I really appreciate the opportunities I had to just drop in when I needed to talk. I mean, I know we had our regular meetings, but every now and then something crazy would boil over, and it's like I need to go and talk to Bill.
I was used to drop in visitors on various subjects, so you were no exception.
Anyway, so what's next?
What's next? I would say that we're looking forward to offering mentor training with updated material. So if anybody wants to be a mentor, and I would say a lot of people have things to offer, so you shouldn't be nervous about being a mentor because everybody has something to offer.
Sure.
We're going to offer mentor training. You can reach out to me, Kate, if you want to get involved, and you can sign up for a class. We can let you know when they're going to be offered. We also have developed for us mentee training so that we, as a laboratory, can kind of level up our mentoring game.
Wow.
So that's very exciting. We've never had that before.
Yeah, that's new. So you, if you're worried about what it takes to be a good mentee, we're going to have something for you.
That's right.
That's big.
That's right. and maybe that will make some folks who are a little bit timid, maybe that will help them get comfortable with what to expect out of a mentoring relationship.
Good. All right. So what else have you got for us today?
I do have thoughts.
Okay.
I've had so many mentors who say, I never had a career development plan.
Sure.
But,
career development plan.
But,
what is that?
And it seems in a place that has so much paper, I understand the hesitancy to make another piece of paper, but I think it's very valuable to put together a career development plan. It helps you think through what your long-term and maybe even short-term goals are and see where the gaps are, see how you're doing in positioning yourself in meeting those goals. And you have a piece of paper that you can go take to your mentor to
Right.
surround, to have a framework of a conversation about, to ask advice about. It's a really good icebreaker to kind of center around, I have this career development plan, or I have specific career questions to start off the conversation. It's a lot less intimidating than having a maybe more open and abstract desire
Sure.
to just have a mentor.
Sure. The other thing that I think it's important to point out is that the career development plan website module itself has a step where they prompt you to share it with your boss. Your manager, whoever you are and whoever your manager is the biggest potential advocate for you. The other person who can steer opportunities your way or say to you, hey, listen, this thing over here, I think that is right up your alley. You should go try that because it will help you see this next thing that you might do, or it's really your chance to shine over here. And so if your boss knows that you're interested in XYZ, they probably have more power than most folks to make sure that XYZ ends up in your inbox.
I strongly agree with that. Ideally, your boss is your biggest advocate, knows you well, and knows your interest. I think it's important to try to have a dialogue with your boss about what your future interests are, because like you said, he or she can steer opportunities your way, could suggest you for a stretch assignment, could suggest you for some committee work that might align with one of your goals in the future. And so having an open dialogue about what you want to do with your career, if you know, or even if you don't know, can be very helpful. And you can view your boss maybe as a mentor as well. I always tell the folks who work in my group that they get me for free. I can help them find other mentors, but they get me for free.
Very good.
Whether they like it or not.
Right. So I know you wanted to talk a little bit about having multiple mentors or multiple perspectives. What's your sense of that?
I am a big fan of diversity in mentorship. And what I mean by that is I have very comfortable conversations with my peers. I have good conversations with people who are maybe in my management chain or maybe in my department that know me well. But I also find a lot of value in putting together a career development plan and calling someone who doesn't know me as well, because you are forced to think of yourself in a different way. How am I going to explain myself, my goals, what I want to get out of this relationship to someone who doesn't know you at all?
Right.
There's definite value in that. There's value in getting diversity in experiences, in perspectives, in levels of management or the technical advisor folks. I just think that everyone has their own unique experiences and perspectives to offer, and the more of that you can gain, the better off that you'll be.
Sure. One of the biggest benefits for me of having John as one of my mentors is that the perspective he brings to the table is, Eric, when you do your Eric thing, right, this is how it looks to senior management, right, which is not a perspective that other folks have necessarily offered to me. I mean, some folks may have it, but John's come out and said, hey, you need to slow down. If you're presenting to somebody like Tom, having facts and figures is very helpful. You have a very informal conversational style, and John will say, and I like that, but that doesn't work with everyone, right? And you need to know you'll be more effective if you present a little bit differently. And that's been really, really helpful. And as many mentors as I have, he was the first person who said something like that to me.
So he's an executive leader, but is also a safe space for you because you've established this mentoring relationship where he can give you advice and he can put on the hat of senior manager, but he can also put on the hat of, I'm going to help you succeed. And you having a mentor in that sort of situation is helpful in guiding parts of you.
Sure. One of my under the hood, secrets of how I run my career is I do a lot of things with Outlook appointments and Outlook tasks in particular. And so if something's important to me, I will bake it into a task that pops up in front of me once a week or once a month or whatever. And I have actually a couple from John that pop up periodically and just say, hey, remember, boom, this. And it's like, okay. Do I have any upcoming appointments or engagements where that's going to be advice that I need to remember, right? And then I send it away and it comes back, next week or next month or whatever it is.
I'm glad that you shared that. That is really interesting. I think probably more of us should be doing things like that. Sometimes you have conversations with your boss or a mentor or something where you get kind of squishy advice where you're not exactly sure how to apply it, and having a reminder pop up to apply it, and then looking ahead on your calendar thinking, where is the best place for me to try out this new approach, or where is this going to be applicable in the next week or 2 weeks?
Right.
That's a very purposeful way of applying the advice that you give.
And it's been really, really useful for me.
One of the most meaningful experiences I had here was when I was very, very young, new engineer. I had been here for a couple years working in core manufacturing and was really just living day to day, hoping to do a good job, trying to do a good job, and just hoping not to screw up. And so I was sort of just knee deep in trying to do my best and hadn't really thought about my career at that point. I was still kind of brand new. And one of the most meaningful things that happened was my boss at the time, Clark, was kind of the first to give me that nudge, the I believe in you nudge. And I was struggling with confidence. Like I said, I was just trying to do my best and not screw up. And Clark said, you could do this job. You could do this. You could do this management thing.
Sure.
And I hadn't even thought about it. I hadn't thought about my career, and I never would have thought that anybody would have trusted me to manage and influence in that way.
Right.
And I reflect on that. It was huge for me, because I don't think I would be here today in the job that I have, in the position that I have, in being so active, maybe even in mentoring, had he not done that. I didn't view myself as ready at that time. I don't remember applying for management positions until much later, but it was just the seed that I needed, that then I could maybe nurture a bit that I didn't even realize was in there. And I say that too because you don't realize maybe as either as a manager or a mentor or a leader, some of the little things that you do or say can make a huge difference to somebody else.
Sure. And so what was it like in that moment where this new future that you hadn't even imagined for yourself, suddenly the door kind of opens a crack on it, and all of a sudden somebody who you respect and admire says, this is something that you could do, and you what was that like?
It was awesome because it helped me have more confidence in my job. It helped me think that maybe it's worth learning more than just my little piece of the puzzle. It motivated me to take maybe a broader view.
Right.
But it certainly was the nudge that I needed at the time to think differently.
Clark, ladies and gentlemen, you can leave the thank you notes on this door.
I've hopefully told him this already.
Well, if not, we're going to take care of that big time.
I mentioned that I like diversity in mentorship. Can you, Eric, speak about your mentoring experiences, or as a mentee, I guess,
Okay.
Seeking out diversity in your own mentorship?
Right. I think my diversity and mentorship thing is just part of it is an aspect of who I am, just diversity and variety wise in general. I have never decided to make the leap into management, but I've thought about it and I've talked about it. And my last serious round of thinking about it and talking about it, I was asking for a lot of advice from mentors, but also people who know me. And my last boss before moving to CM, Jacob, I had come into the meeting with him with a list of things that I was looking for in my career and work experience. And Jacob, who had been my boss for like 2 years, is like, you missed one. You need variety. And that's not on the list. And I was like, I do need variety. So thank you, Jacob. I'll leave the note on your door as well. And so for me, if you're trying to reach the place where you have more and more bandwidth and more leeway to operate in your zone of genius, right?
Zone of genius. I like it.
It helps you to get as many different perspectives as possible. Because I think some of the biggest and most important issues that we deal with as a laboratory, whether it's designing S1B or whether it's grappling with diversity and inclusion or whether it's figuring out how to modernize our facilities, whatever it is, we got 8,000 people who work here, and they have different pieces of the organization. And what we really, really need so much of the time is the mind meld from Star Trek, right? And it's hard to I mean, you can't actually do it directly like they do in the show, but we get there by talking to each other and by listening and by trying to gain a sense of ourselves as an entity that has to act collectively, but all of the individuals are part of it, right? We're all a piece of it. And so we have to move forward together, and odds are very good, whatever the situation is. I'm just not smart enough and haven't been around long enough to see all the pieces of it on my own, right? And so if I'm trying to do something that's outside of my local area, that's something that affects a bigger swath of the company, it really helps if I get somebody who is in management or who's in fleet support or who's in facilities or who's a woman or who, whatever, who's an introvert, right? I just think it is helpful for me to get into a relationship with a mentor, sit down, kind of bare my soul and say, this is what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what parts am I missing, or what would you do in a similar situation. And the folks who have served as my mentors have been great. I mean, Bill at one point said to me, these are great ideas, but you need to be thinking about how you can have the conversations with Lynchburg to get them to find a way to solve this problem, not you marching in there with the big light bulb over your head saying, this is how I'm going to make you solve this problem, right? And I was like, okay, because I have that tendency to dive in and, the dark side of the helper role is, right, you go in and you dominate and you fix people even if they don't want to be fixed, right? And I'm very, very susceptible to that, right? So, so yeah, I just think that I tend to rush in, like at this point, I've been in the program 24 years. Odds are, given a situation, I have a very strongly reinforced habit loop and script around how I'm going to respond to almost any situation. And sometimes those instincts are terrible. They just are. And I find that having a different group of mentors weighing in really helps put me in check in some ways I need to be. Because at this point, I mean, it's great to be an advisor and have the role and the autonomy that I do, but I'm playing on a bigger stage with bigger groups of people on bigger sets of issues, and it is easy for me to be a bull in the china shop in ways that I could not have been 10 years ago, right? And so it's very, very helpful to have folks say things to me. Like I got a great piece of advice from Mike a week or two ago where he basically said, it is pointless to gear up for a fight that you may not need to have. And that kind of set me back on my heels. I'm like, okay.
Interesting.
Time to go for plan B. So yeah, it's thank you, Mike. The gift will be at your door. So yeah, I just think that none of us are going to live long enough to get all the perspectives and work in all the departments and make all the mistakes that help you be your best, most productive, most, zone of genius-y you, right? And your mentors can help you.
Very eloquently put.
Thank you.
And I will give you credit every time I use Zone of Genius.
I did not invent that.
It's the first time I've heard it.
I've heard it
really
in
like
some
it.
podcast somewhere. I can't remember where. And I mean, I think that's a career development thing. I think when you first land in your first job in the NR program, right? They hire you in, you're an associate engineer, welcome to the lab, blah, 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 blah. We put you here, here's your mentor, here's your job assignment, get it done. And okay, you do that. 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. But at some point, you've earned the right to move on to a different set of things, either a different set of roles or an expanded set of roles within that same group, or to move and try something else. And not everybody's career goes this way or needs to go this way, but for me, it's been this virtuous spiral of moving to the next job, where the next job is something that I pick that's more aligned with my interests or my zone of genius or whatever it is. And, these last 15 years or so, it's just been me talking my way into a succession of jobs where I have more and more and more ability to work in my zone of genius and do whatever it is. And I think the moment that stands out most clearly to me is actually a moment that was a number of years ago. We had a couple of new engineers coming into the department, and Brian was walking them around and doing like the walk and talk, like introduce you to everybody in the whole department. And, I hear him coming down the hall, right? And he's talking to Matt, who's next to me, and then he finally comes to me. Brian comes around the corner with these two brand new engineers in tow, and he says, and this is Eric. He does... And then there's this really long pause, right? And it probably was only a couple of seconds, right? But it feels much longer in my mind. And he goes, whatever he wants. I was like,
that's excellent.
I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. I adore RJ. He is the greatest boss ever. He lets me do what I need to do on behalf of the department and on behalf of the directorate. And if I also want to get involved in making the Fukushima documentary or diving into diversity and inclusion issues, RJ is like, we should have a company where people get to do those things. Go do.
That
right?
sounds like the definition of empowered to me.
Right. Yeah. And so he's a very empowering manager. I've hit the point where my job and my career isn't about... It's not that I don't take management direction. It's just that the management direction is far more vague. And, Carl has talked about this, right? He's a consultant in an FSNT. He works up at Knowles. He's a really, really great guy. And he'll get together with, GM staff type management or department management level folks. And they'll say, well, here's this kind of nebulous situation that needs some energy put into it to get it to a better place. Go. And that's all the direction he gets. Right? And and my career is starting to look more and more like that too. And
I think that's one of your most unique and valuable skills, because I've witnessed it, is your ability to take dubious direction and turn it into an action plan.
Right.
And I don't think you'd be as skilled at that had you not had diversity in your own career and mentorship to help you understand how the other lives.
Right. Okay. Any more freestyling you'd like to do, Ms.
I think so. Thank you so much for, letting me do this. I enjoy having a conversation. I like to help people, and I really, really do believe in mentorship. And I think our company has a pretty robust mentoring program that people just need to tap into.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. This is Kate signing off.
Thanks, Eric.
Time for one more story before we go. Last year, I had this situation at work where I found a number of sensitive documents in places they shouldn't have been. All of them were interesting, but one was really juicy, relevant to my work, good stuff for me to know, but I wasn't really supposed to see it. I found these documents at the end of the work week and spent much of the following weekend wrestling with what to do. If I didn't say anything, it meant that maybe more documents would come my way in the future, and that was pretty exciting. On the other hand, not saying anything also felt a little bit slimy. I knew that if I talked to my wife or my friends from church, asked them for advice, they're a bunch of goody two-shoes. They would tell me to confess. And what fun would that be? So I continued to wrestle with it for a while on my own. What broke the impasse at the end was the idea hitting me I should go ask Jim for advice. Now, I didn't end up actually doing that, but it helped me to see that I would be putting Jim in a corner. If I didn't report the situation, he'd be obligated to report me. And after that, the end came very quickly. I went into the office the following Monday, started the conversation with my management chain. They really appreciated me coming forward, and we got the problems fixed. I did talk with Jim about it later, but by that time, we were mostly exploring the irony that my manager saw me as a good guy who came forward and reported the issue, and they didn't really see how tempted I had been to turn to the dark side. At work, I have a mission and value statement for myself, something I've written down. One part of it talks about how I want to be trusted. But underneath that is a deeper truth, that if I want to be trusted, then what I really need is to be trustworthy, to behave in ways that earn me the right to ask for people's trust. And that deeper truth runs across my whole career. Many of us spend a lot of energy trying to get promoted to advisor, but fewer people recognize that in this company, odds are pretty good that the title will come to you long after you've proved that you're worthy of it. That's just the way the system works. And fewer still understand that the title matters a lot less than being an advisor, doing the work, making the contributions, and taking satisfaction in that work and your role in it, even if the title hasn't caught up with you yet. The best mentors will make you look in the mirror and look hard. Jim, when I caught up with him, had some great things to say about that.
Eric, you asked me about mentoring, and I think there's a couple of key ingredients in mentoring. Number one is mentoring is something that you do on an ongoing basis. Okay, it's not something that you necessarily have to have formal feedback sessions. It's a thing where when you see something going well with someone, you give them that feedback immediately. If you think of something that might help them in their development or where they're tackling a problem, you talk to them with a cup of coffee in the hallway and give them that guidance. And so it's something that becomes a very informal process more so than a formal one. The other aspect of it is when there's times that there needs to be feedback on something that's negative, that you do it very directly. You don't sugarcoat it. You look at someone and say, how can I best deliver this? You don't want to have the person leaving your office with their tail between their legs, but you want them to understand that whatever position they have gotten themselves into, it's their issue to deal with, not someone else's. You look at them and you can say, hey, I love you like a brother, but the situation that you are in, you have created, okay? And only you can go through and rebuild the bridge.
The best mentors will give you homework, like Bill, who had me write out the traits I needed to demonstrate in order to be ready for promotion to advisor, and who ended every meeting with,
just to help me with where we go next, how about writing up a few notes and email them to me so I have that to start us off the next time we get together.
The best mentors will tell you things you don't realize about yourself, like Natalie, who said to me a few weeks back,
You know what your superpower is? You just go and talk to people and amazing things happen.
These are the characteristics of great mentors. They will help you, but they won't do it for you. They'll reward the trust and effort you give them with patience, care, a listening ear, solid advice. They will come to know you and to love you. In the end, your mentor will be proud of your accomplishments, and the company may benefit as well. But it isn't really about them. It's about you becoming your better, stronger, wiser, nobler self. The version of you that gets to operate in your zone of genius. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. I really appreciate the time that you've spent with us today. I also really appreciate all of our guests and all of my mentors, my boss, the many people that we called out as being helpful or inspiring. I want to give special credit to Amber de la Garza, the productivity specialist, who has this great podcast, Productivity Straight Talk, and who frequently in that podcast uses the term zone of genius. I hope that this podcast has been useful and entertaining for you. Be well, be safe, and have a great day.